The one-off pink ball test between Australia and India has ended in a tame draw, as most would have expected after the end of day 3. But here we are on the Outside View Live one final time this test match to discuss on that final day of that Australia-India test. Yes, it's a drawn affair, Ananya, but let's start by talking about the partnership that began the final day between Ellyse Perry and Ashleigh Gardner. The first half an hour, 40 minutes saw them show some urgency, didn't they? They scored about 40, 45 runs in that first hour or inside the first hour. And it seemed as if they were batting towards a declaration.
It did look like that at the start of the day. Ellyse Perry, I think, got off the mark off the first, or took a run off the very first delivery. It was a tap and run. And it just looked like at that point that Australia were moving towards, first of all, wanted to eradicate those 85 runs to get them past the follow-on total and then maybe push for a result. It did look like that at the start. And I think both Perry and Gardner batted really beautifully, especially Ashleigh Gardner. Last night, you saw that she was quite streaky, a lot of inside edges, and she didn't look very comfortable, but she came out this morning or this afternoon in the Gold Coast, and she looked extremely comfortable. I think her footwork was a lot better, and she played the way that she normally plays in white ball cricket as well, going after the spinners, going over the top as well. So it was a lovely partnership, and I think at that point India would have felt like maybe Australia could be slipping away at this point. But they came back exceptionally well. But it was a great partnership, and it looked like it would breathe some life into the test at that point.
Yeah, indeed. Let's look at that match summary once. India batted first. Remember, they had lost the toss. Australia had won it and inserted India in. Smriti Mandhana scored a magnificent 127. In reply, Australia posted 241 for 9, declared with Ellyse Perry 68 not out. And then in that second innings, India once again began quite well in that opening partnership, 70 runs between Shafali Verma and Smriti Mandhana. Shafali made a 50, her third in 4 innings before the last innings, and the match ended in a draw. But Ananya, Ellyse Perry playing test match cricket, let alone pink ball tests, is a different tale in itself. She's not been dismissed in day-night test cricket. She averages in high 80s. What's happening there?
I feel like, if you have to get Ellyse Perry back into form, whether it's with the bat or with the ball, that, all you have to do is put her in whites, give her a red or pink ball, and she's a completely different beast, it seems like. And again, I think India would have probably felt like they ran into a bit of a wall with her. She's got such fantastic technique that, like Jhulan Goswami, like Mithali Raj, she seems like someone who's made for Test cricket. Like I said about Deepti Sharma yesterday, she plays each ball as an event. Nothing seems to faze her, and it's just about winning each event or each delivery. So, Test cricket is definitely. Well, I feel like Ellyse Perry should play a lot more Test cricket. I feel like we're probably being robbed of something really special by not seeing her more in whites. But yeah, I think again she played really, really well. But I think India can take pride in the fact that they've kind of stopped her consecutive run of 50s. I know they didn't dismiss her, but hey, she didn't score a 50 in that final inning. So it's a win and you can take it.
Yeah, indeed. It's a wall, as you mentioned, but it's not unbreakable as India might have discovered. They had opportunities to dismiss her, didn't take it. But at the end of the day, what counts in Ellyse Perry's case is that 68 not out that boosts her average to about 86 plus. And India were expected to bat irrespective of whether they had an option of enforcing follow-on. Were you surprised by the way they batted?
A little bit. Look, I think the openers, you expected them to take a bit of time and play themselves in before they caught up. And I think Smriti Mandhana and Shafali Verma at the start took a little more time than I expected them to. But again, they're players who could catch up. And it looked like towards the middle of that second session that they were going to catch up and they started playing a bit of a T20 game. But once Mandhana got out was when I didn't quite understand what India were trying to do. They did send Yastika Bhatia up the order, so it seemed like a positive move. But she didn't make much of an impact. But once Poonam Raut came in, it seemed like both her and Shafali Verma kind of shut shop a little bit. I know Australia became quite defensive, sending their fielders back, kind of cutting off the boundary options. But it did seem like both Raut and Verma were just playing out the session. So it wasn't, I think most people who were watching weren't quite sure what was happening, what India were trying to do at that point. Because if they did want to dangle the carrot, it would have been, they would have had to get to a score quite quickly, which kind of didn't happen towards the end of the second session. And then when they came out to bat in the third session, I think everyone was just kind of scratching their head saying, okay, wait, what are you trying to do now? And then that declaration, of course, felt like it came way too late, 270 odd in 32 overs. It was just a bridge too far, even with the likes of Alyssa Healy and Beth Mooney, who can be extremely explosive. It felt like a bridge too far at that point. So, without being, I hope I don't get a lot of flack for this, but it did feel like at that point in their second innings, India did kind of kill the test match.
Indeed, but it also at this point seems like both teams tried a bit on their part to eke out a result in a test match, which is originally of 4 days, but they were trying to get out a result in 3 days because rain essentially robbed them of a day. And then it's almost as if the women's tests are reliant on results to kind of boost viewership or demand. So a bit unfair on that part as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I said this at the very start of the day that neither team, I suppose, should feel like or had to push for a result. Like, had Australia batted through that first session without losing a wicket, I would have said that they are well within their rights to play the entire day and not declare and push India for a result. But of the two teams, looking at the series in its entirety, India are the ones chasing the ball, and they would have had to chase the win. I think Australia, they are ahead on points now, which are 6-4. I know it's only 2 points, but they are still ahead. So all they have to do is win 2 T20Is now, whereas India have to win all 3 if they are to win the series. So in that context, I felt like India, if a team were to push the pace, India had to push the pace. The ball was in their court, whereas Australia could have hung back and played the way they did towards the end. They just kind of held fort, and they weren't ever going to go for a win. Although Alyssa Healy did come out and look like that, Australia were just going to drop anchor at that point.
Yeah, indeed. 6-4 is the points tally in this multi-format series. 3 T20Is to come, 2 points each, which would mean that for India to win the multi-format series, they will have to whitewash Australia, whereas for Australia, even one win would kind of put them in comfortable position. But we all know how tough it's to beat Australia. But let's talk a bit more about Mithali Raj. Ananya, a strange thing to not walk into bat even when 3 wickets were fallen, possibly as everybody is saying, possibly her last test match in Australia. We also have seen perhaps the last of Jhulan Goswami in Australia. But could you kind of make out why she couldn't come? What possible reasons could be? I know we don't know the real reasons, but what could be the reason according to you?
Look, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of the team. So, this is the end of Mithali Raj's series in Australia, whereas Deepti Sharma is going to continue and play the T20. So I'm just going to say that she wanted to give her time out in the middle. Not that she didn't have time out in the first innings, but it's just another opportunity to bat in Australia in those conditions under lights. So I'm going to say that was the reason, but also we did see that she, I think pulled a muscle in that first innings when she was turning back before she got run out. She was attended to by the physio as well. So, maybe there was something there, but from my perspective, it was probably just, hey, my tour is done. Maybe you can go out and have a hit.
Yeah, fair reading that. But remember, the test match has come to an end. The one-off pink ball test match, Australia's second, India's first. And in the women's format, 2 pink ball tests have ended in a draw, yet to see a result. But let's talk about the test match in whole. Ananya, India, for major parts of it, were leading the charge. What could be some of the lessons that they'll take home after how they did over these 4 days?
I'm sure they'll take a lot of confidence out of it because, if you look at, coming into this tour, there was so much talk about the lack of pace bowling depth and, that we have to find fast bowlers, that we need support for Julian Goswami. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have the best fast bowling attack ever. So it seems like a bit of a quick turnaround there. Although that's a bit of a hyperbolic statement, I do think that India have found something with their seamers. I think Meghna Singh and Pooja Vastrakar bowled exceptionally well, and I feel like this is the tour of Pooja Vastrakar. She's just come leaps and bounds since that tour of England. Really found a lot of consistency with her bowling, and also brought in some variation with that wobble seam delivery. She's moving the ball both ways. Has found a lot of control. So I feel like India are probably finding some pieces of that puzzle that we've been harping about. Going into that World Cup, they do need players to fill certain roles. We found Yastika Bhatia in that ODI series. She played, with some confidence in this test as well. Pooja did the same, bowled very well. So I feel like, looking at this test match, there are, I suppose, pieces of the puzzle that you can fill in for that ODI team. Just to say that that the Indian team pushed Australia to the brink in a test match away from home for them in conditions that were alien to them. Most people would have thought they would have gotten steamrolled. There's just so much confidence and momentum that they can take into that T20I series for sure.
Yeah, indeed. Well, as soon as that announcement for a pink ball test in Australia was made, comparisons were made with that men's side that got bowled out for 36, and all those meme world got a boost. But to see India do so well, stretch it to the last day, even though the result was out of question almost once the rain ruled out one entire days of play, that tells a lot about this Indian unit, doesn't it? But Ananya, we saw this similar or same bunch who did well in that test match against England, despite having rain robbing time there. This bunch seems to be learning things pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think I read this on Twitter. I forget who wrote it, but just about the bowling group and how consistent they've been, the lengths that they've hit, and it's just a reflection of a lot of these players coming out having played a lot of domestic cricket before breaking into the Indian team. You think of Meghna Singh, Rajeshwari Gaikwad, Deepti Sharma. They have a lot of overs under their belt. So just to develop the consistency, develop that skill. They've shown a lot of promise there. So look, like you said, and like I said earlier, I think India have a lot of good to take out of this test match, and going into the T20, it's a completely different format, but there's just so much confidence that a young group can take from that test in Bristol, from this test here, that they've really challenged teams in what to them are alien conditions, and really push them to the brink. And if there were an extra day, probably in both tests, you never know what could have happened there.
Yeah, indeed. An extra day is always a what if situation, because in Bristol we saw, and we were kind of wondering if that a miracle could happen where the test match in Australia could last 5 days. Wasn't to be at the moment. But remember, it's a drawn affair. But so far, Ananya, Australia have been pushed to the brink in ODIs as well as this test match. They won the first ODI, yes. But the second ODI, the result went their way, but very, very close match. And the third one, which kind of India pulled one back. Momentum seems to be in India's favor, as we see in the test match as well. How strong a reposite do you expect from Australia?
Well, they are the T20 World Cup champions. They have kind of had a lot of success against India in the shortest format. So they'll definitely come all guns blazing. Look, it is a completely different format. It's a format that they're very used to. They have extremely dynamic players in that lineup. It's a format where each of their players knows exactly what's expected of them. So I think that's something that will work in Australia's favor, is that I feel like the Indian team, they're still kind of figuring out what each player is expected to do aside from that opening pair. You still have players who are figuring out their roles in that T20 team. We're not sure about the fitness of Harmanpreet Kaur. So there are questions, around what this team will look like. Who will lead that attack? Will Shekhar Pandey get a look in? So I'm sure Australia will come back very strong. After all, they are playing at home. They will want to win that 3-0 and just kind of reaffirm their dominance. They've probably feel at this point like they've been pushed a little too much by an Indian team that wasn't expected to do that. Although Australia are under strength, I'm sure that batting group especially will want to come out and show what they're made of.
Yeah, let's talk a bit more about Australia and their takeaways from this test match. The way Georgia Wareham was used, does it tell us something about her injury or her extent of her fitness? Because 11 overs across 2 innings, does that kind of send a message out about her fitness and her abilities at the moment?
Probably. Look, it did seem like that at the start when Lanning was a little hesitant to throw the ball to her. But when you look at it, she was still in the field. She was chasing down deliveries to the boundary, so she was doing all the hard work. I think she admitted it towards the end of that second innings that she probably didn't do enough to keep the ball in her hands or bowl well enough to keep the ball in her hands for an extended period. But again, when you have 8 bowling options in that lineup, someone's going to miss out, and unfortunately it was Georgia Wareham for Australia. But I'm sure, again, going into that T20 format, she does know what her role is. Australia know exactly how to use her, and she has been a wicket taker for them. So I'm sure, going into that, the T20 format, she'll play a big role for them.
Your thoughts about that seam attack and what lessons perhaps they would have taken for Australia?
Well, it was a very young seam attack outside Ellyse Perry. So, I'm sure for one, I'll be interested to know how they pull up after this, having spent 140 overs in the field over those first 2.5 days, and then, to come in again and bowl in the last session. I'm sure they'll learn a lot from it. It's a new format. They would have seen how Jhulan Goswami went about her business and how successful she was. So, just I suppose talking to the likes of Perry, if they get a chance to speak to Goswami, I'm sure they'll learn a lot from those senior pros. But it's just an experience for them. I think they are more used to playing white ball cricket, more used to playing T20 cricket, because a lot of these youngsters have come out of that WBBL and been very successful in it. So they'll go into a format that they're more comfortable in. But I'm keen to see which of them actually gets a go in the T20As.
Yes, indeed. The test match has come to an end. 6-4 reads the points for the multi-format series, because 2 points split for this test match. But before we draw that pink-colored curtain on the test match and this show, Ananya, I'd like you to pick your moment of day 4 of this test match.
Well, I'm going to stick with the Gardner versus Mandana thing and pick the catch that Ashleigh Gardner took to see the back of Smriti Mandana. It was in a test match that's seen, I don't know, multiple chances dropped. I think it was pretty special for her to take that, so I'm going with that.
Yeah, indeed. Gardner did not end up dismissing Smriti Mandana once more, but she did have a role to play in her dismissal. Right, there you go. The test match ends, and that's part 2 of this Australia-India tour of Australia. The ODIs were in favor of Australia 2-1. The test match is a drawn affair. What do T20Is have in store? There are 4 days to go before the T20Is kick off. But remember, after having 4 days of continuous cricket, I know the mind would want more action, even though there isn't for 4 days. But remember, there's a magazine that you can catch up on. The 5th issue of Women's Cricket Zone magazine is out. You can have your copy. You can download the virtual copy as well. Do let us know the stories you like. Do let us know what other aspects of that magazine you like. And it is Shafali Verma's story that's on the cover. So do read that and have your copy if you can. Right. Thanks, Ananya, for sticking by for the ODIs and the test match. It was a wonderful affair, both these series. And for all of you watching, do catch us on the Outside View Live for the T20Is as well. And do always keep following Women's Cricket Zone for all updates on women's cricket. That's it from us this time. See you. Take care.